Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Erin Navarro, and I am going to be your game show host today. Welcome to Check Yourself, the background check game show. My pronouns are she and her, and we are so excited to have you all here. And then, as people keep coming into the meeting, I'll just ask Michael if you can keep admitting them, and we'll get started. So, welcome to our fun little experimental game show to continue to talk about background checks. If you've been around VSP for a while, you know that we are very much into background checks and talking about them. So, again, this session will be recorded and posted to our website. We're going to move pretty quick because we have a lot of questions to get through. So, if you miss something, the recording will be there. We'll have I forget how many questions. We'll have a certain amount of questions. Then I'll pause the recording. We'll do the draw for the gift card for $50 to co-op. And then we have two bonus questions. So it'll likely bring us overtime, but I highly recommend you stick around because I think they're very interesting and we're very passionate and excited about learning about background checks. So you're welcome to stick around for that. If you have to go, no problem. And I would just like to start us off today with a land affirmation. I was reading background check on here and trying to say land affirmation. Our main office is situated on Treaty 6 territory in an area that holds many indigenous names. It's referred to by the Nahea people as Amiskwichi Waskihigan, and colonially known as Edmonton. And our staff board and work extend into Treaty 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10 territories. I'm zooming in today from Treaty 7 here in Mohkinstsis, otherwise known as Calgary. And we affirm the importance of honoring these historic agreements as well as all future treaties. The land we call Alberta is the ancestral territory and present-day home of many Indigenous peoples, including the Nahea, Dene, Yare, Nakota, Anishinaabe, Niitsitapi, Inuit, and Métis. We are very grateful for their stewardship of this land, and as an act of reconciliation and goodwill, it is our intention to ensure that our organization, along with the entire social impact nonprofit voluntary sector, can become good partners in supporting the land and communities. So today, as we talk about background checks and engage in learning together, we're also looking around and seeing the seasons change, and I really encourage us all to take a moment to consider what that could teach us. Just learning from what's happening around us on the land. And as the land gets ready to sleep for winter, are there perhaps policies or screening steps that may need to be retired or reevaluated, put on pause, so that we can be ready for a fresh start once spring comes around, and that we can continue welcoming volunteers into our organizations rather than excluding them through tools such as a background check, which has been known to historically exclude certain groups of volunteers. So thank you for joining me in our land affirmation. If you've been around VSP for a while, this is not news to you, but this webinar is brought to you by the Volunteer Screening Program, VSP. We're a partnership between Volunteer Alberta and the Government of Alberta. One of the resources I'd like to highlight from VSP is the Vulnerable Sector Check Fee Waiver. So if you're an eligible organization in a participating municipality, you might be able to get a fee waiver. You're welcome to look on our website or reach out to us. We also have micro grants for volunteer screening development. Those open in June, though. So the fee waiver is open year-round if you'd like to talk more about that. We also don't provide legal advice, so please contact a legal professional if you have any questions there. So with that, I'll just get everyone to either use your phone, open up another browser, you can scan the QR code, but we're using a platform named WooClap. If you were registered before Thursday last week, I sent an email with instructions on how to use the platform. So you can go to wooclap.com and enter in the event code NXAXEB. That event code will be on all the following slides. So if you miss it, that's okay. Or you can scan the QR code. Questions throughout the event. We might not be able to get through all of them. Michael is monitoring the chat for me. Thank you, Michael. But if we have additional questions we can't get to, I'll stick around at the end, or you're also welcome to reach out to us at screening@volunteeralberta.ab.ca if you want to have a continuing conversation. So I'll just give a couple more seconds so you can scan the QR code and log in. There is the I'm confused button. I believe that's on. But we're going to keep moving through questions just for the sake of time. So If we miss one or two, that's okay. The draw for the gift card will be random. And you're also welcome if you want to put your answers in the chat if you don't want to use what we got. That's totally fine. Uh, okay. So is everyone ready? We're gonna start with our first question. So this should show up on your screen, browser, phone, whatever. So just holler at me if it's not working or let Michael know. But we're going to move to our first question. How exciting. Which of the following is a true statement? A record suspension can be revoked. A record suspension can be applied for as a youth. A record suspension can be applied for immediately after conviction. A record suspension erases convicted records. So you're welcome to select whichever answer you feel is correct. I'll just give you a couple more seconds. I see there's 3 of you who have answered. And then I'll give you the right answer. Okay, 2 more seconds. Okay, here's the correct answer. The correct answer is number 1, A. A record suspension can be revoked. So the Parole Board of Canada may revoke it if the subject is convicted of another offense, so they find the person is no longer acting in good conduct, or if they find the person's application for a record suspension was deceptive or concealed information. So record suspensions are only applicable for adults 18 years old and up. Youth cannot apply for them, nor will they be necessary due to how youth records are protected under the Youth Criminal Justice Act. So record suspensions can only be applied for after a set number of years, dependent on the type of offense. That's a whole lot of information. Again, this will be recorded, but basically, if we're looking at youth background checks, there are specific things that we need to know when we are analyzing those background checks or even considering asking them. So good job, everyone. That's pretty good. Next question. A VSC, a vulnerable sector check, will search the National Sex Offenders Registry. True or false? So we'll give everyone about 20 seconds here to answer. Okay, I just want to also acknowledge the question that was asked in the chat. I will be sending out this recording to everyone who's registered, and then it'll also be on our website. So with that, let's see what the answer is, true or false. The answer is false. So a VSC only searches through national records to see if a person has received a record suspension. So previously known as a pardon for sexual offense. If they have received a record suspension, they would not be listed in the NSOR. While a base level CR criminal record check also does not check that same NSOR list, because those on that list will have a criminal record, which will be pinged on that search. So no, it does not check the National Sex Offenders Registry. Okay, let's keep going. Which legislation mandates that a VSC must be used for all employees and volunteers? Number 1, Protection for Persons in Care Act. Number 2, Early Learning and Child Care Act. 3, the Freedom to Care Act. 4, only A and B, or 1 and 2. 5, all of the above. Or 6, none of the above. I'm also seeing some answers in the chat. Okay, I'm going to show you the results. It might be surprising. None of the above. So there's no legislation. Only the Early Learning and Child Care Act, under its regulations, mentions the need for VSC for each employee or volunteer that has unsupervised access to children. However, it should be noted that Section 25 2.1 also states volunteers who are parents of children receiving preschool care in the program may request an exemption. The Protection for Persons in Care Act currently only indicates a criminal records check is required, a CRC, and does not specifically mention a VSC. And the Freedom to Care Act does not mention criminal record checks of any kind. Fun fact, to us, this is very fun. There is no federal legislation that requires an organization to conduct a vulnerable sector check. So that's another great point to bring up to any other legal professionals that you work with and talk to in considering what you need for volunteer screening. Okay, next question. What information does a criminal record check search, a CRC? So you can select multiple answers here, I believe, but convictions. So what information does a criminal record check search? Convictions, non-conviction record, traffic violation, arrests, child abuse of neglect records, employment verification, youth criminal records, financial or credit issues. This is a tough one. You really have to know your stuff. Let's give a couple more seconds. Oh, it only lets you choose one option on the app. I'm so sorry. I'm getting it mixed up with another question. Okay, I'm seeing more answers come in. Just a couple more seconds. All right, let's see what the correct answer is. Arrests. So arrests, convictions, and non-conviction records are the main areas of focus, but it can also depend on police service you access it from. On the police service you access it from. Traffic violations and child neglect records will only be reflected if they resulted in an arrest or are being charged under the Criminal Code of Canada. Youth criminal records, it's a bit more of a gray area because after a youth turns 18, the youth record may remain open during an access period that could last up to 5 years and may be pulled. So that means something different if they're 12 years old or if they're 17 years old, it can change. However, for youth under 18, their records have unique restrictions that limits access to only certain people and for specific reasons. Okay. What is the requirement for a position a position must meet in order to request a VSC, a vulnerable sector check? 1, they must work with a nonprofit. 2, they must work directly with a vulnerable person in a position of trust and or authority. 3, they must have access to the organization's financial information. 4, they must submit a resume. So again, only one option for this one. I'm seeing some options for 2. I'm seeing some answers saying 1. Somebody's saying 3. Okay, let's find out. The answer is number 2. They must work directly with a vulnerable person in a position of trust and or authority. And that is part of our eligibility criteria when we're looking at the vulnerable sector check fee waiver applications that come in. We also look for, in terms of access, unsupervised access, because we think that also gives an increased level of risk if somebody is one-on-one working with a youth, for example. But when it comes to applying at police stations, at police detachments in the RCMP, they must work directly with a vulnerable person in a position of trust and or authority. Otherwise, they might not get approved to get a VSC. Okay, true or false? A non-conviction record is a record relating to a charge. Oh, let me bring that down. True or false? A non-conviction record is a record relating to a charge the police laid that resulted in no sentence being laid, like when someone is found not guilty. It can also include when someone is found guilty, but they are given an absolute discharge or conditional discharge. So 50-50 chance, that's a wordy one. I'll bring up the whole question again for people who are answering in the chat. I see a couple of trues. I see a false. Okay, I'm gonna release the answer because we need to keep moving. The answer is true. So good job, everyone. 100%. Okay. What is the name of the provincial legislation in Alberta that dictates what information is released in a criminal records check? Your options are Alberta Criminal Records Act, Public Safety Records Act, Personal Information Protection Act, and number 4, there's no current legislation in Alberta for this. So again, we're looking for the provincial legislation that dictates what information is released in a CRC. Okay, I see a couple of 2s, otherwise it's kind of spread out between the 4 options. I see another 3. Okay. The answer is number 4. There is no current legislation in Alberta for this, and this is often a common misconception of what legislation is out there and what it dictates. So in Alberta, they might follow the Alberta Chiefs of Police disclosure guidelines, not legislation, but they're just guidelines. They're not provincially mandated. So while federally, the Criminal Records Act dictates what information is released from federal records, police checks, if you're going to Calgary or if you're going in Edmonton or in any of the surrounding municipalities, they may also include searches of local and provincial databases. It's up to the municipal police service because they might have their own guidelines and rules. So it's really important to know how to read those background checks because it's not necessarily even going to be the same type of information that same databases searched if you have volunteers coming from all over. Okay. Match the type of background check that would be suitable for each position. So I believe you can just drag and drop. So if you're sharing with the chat, then you can go like number 1 matches this letter if you so choose. I'm just gonna wait for one more response to come in. I want to be mindful of people's time too. So if you need to go, that's totally fine. You'll get the recording of this. Okay, let's see. So board of directors, a police information check or a criminal record check if necessary. A board of director role is likely not going to be approved for a vulnerable sector check because they're often not the ones doing the operations working with kids, for example, if your organization works with kids. A police information check or criminal record check, like we learned, there's no legislation saying a board of directors has to have that. There's certain roles that increase with risk, like a treasurer. They're handling some of the financial money and have direct access to those accounts. So maybe that's a role that you want to ask for a background check. But that too, you can bring that up to those legal representatives that you can talk to and understand more about what is covered under insurance, for example, and what is required of you, looking at policy, of course, as well. A volunteer who mentors a youth one-on-one, vulnerable sector check. It's going to check everything in the police information check, plus do that additional search. A volunteer who organizes food hampers. So I specifically didn't say whether or not they were working with vulnerable populations. We can assume that maybe this person isn't working with vulnerable populations. I know that's not always the case, but a background check isn't necessarily needed. but look at policy and look at insurance because that might require it. But there's many things that we can do as organizations to decrease some of that risk and therefore decrease some of the steps that we need to screen, like a background check. True or false? A criminal record check will indicate which convictions were found on a person's record. Okay, I'm seeing a couple of false in the chat, and I'm also seeing a couple of trues. Okay, let's see what the answer is. The answer is false. So good job, everyone. A background check will only indicate if there was no result or if there was a positive. But again, depending on the preferences of each police agency, the RCMP can send your criminal record search directly to the police agency that is processing your certified criminal record check application. And in this case, the police agency uses the Canadian Criminal Real-Time Identification Services, CCRTIS, because that search result, and then it creates its own criminal record check product to provide to you. So the RCMP is not responsible for the delivery of these products to match. So again, it depends where you're getting that background check as well. True or false? If someone cannot obtain a background check, they don't have a permanent address, there's funding barriers, they're a newcomer to Canada, and nothing would necessarily even show up because there's no international searches, it automatically means they are not safe to volunteer at your organization. True or false? I'm seeing some trues, I'm seeing some falses. The answer is false. So this is the last question. So if there's anything we can take away from today, it's knowing that a background check is one thing, one type of screening. And it's as soon as you get a background check, it's expired. It doesn't look at all of the things that the person is still doing. And so many things have to happen for something to even show up on a background check. There's so many ways to screen volunteers. Training is such a great way to screen a volunteer. Having a conversation with them is another way to screen someone. So somebody could have a clear background check and it turns out they're not a good match for your organization, leading to perhaps some unsafe program delivery. So there's so much to think about, and we love talking about this. So you're always welcome to chat with us and talk about your specific contexts and organizational policies and see what can be done to help welcome volunteers into your organizations and into your mission and vision. Okay. Go. Okay. So this is the one where you can choose multiple, and there's a hint. There are 6 correct answers. What are some examples of non-conviction records? Police contact or surveillance, sexual offenses, mental health apprehension, charges withdrawn, acquittal, minor theft, 911 calls, involved in an investigation as a witness. So again, there are 6 correct answers. So you're welcome to put that in the chat or sign into WooClap. And just in case anyone missed it, we are going to do the raffle after the webinar just because we had a technical difficulty. So then I will let the winner know. As long as you're registered, then we'll be able to contact you and you've typed up your full name and put it in the chat. Okay, let's see what our answers are. So the correct answers: police contact or surveillance, mental health apprehensions, charges withdrawn, acquittal, 911 calls, and involved in an investigation as a witness. So that's why it's so important to understand what a background check looks like when there is a positive result. Because again, if somebody's made a 911 call, that doesn't make them unsafe by any means or involved in an investigation as a witness. you can't make those judgments. So it's really important. And then also mental health apprehensions, that does not mean that somebody is unsafe. And I cannot stress that enough. That is something that we need to consider when we're asking for those background checks, and how the volunteer might also feel when we're asking for that information. Do you have privacy assurances and policies so that only the people who need to know what has if there's something that's come up in a background check, just so that that information isn't out there? Do you keep them locked away? Do you keep them encrypted? There's a lot of safety measures and privacy measures that you can take to support volunteerism, to support the volunteers, and also just maintain good practice around background checks. Okay? Now our last question. How exciting. So, true or false? If a person is required to attend for fingerprinting as part of a criminal record check, this does not immediately mean the person has a criminal record. True or false? This is our last question, so I'm looking forward to see what everyone says. I'm seeing a lot of trues in the chat. Let's see what everyone answered on WordClap. True. Good job, everyone. So fingerprinting may be required if there is a possible name similarity. Okay, so it includes any criminal records that have aliases. Declared details, or if declared details do not match the records or some other system message, we may never know what that system message is. This might just mean they have a similar name, and the fingerprinting will be able to clarify if it's the same file. And unfortunately, police are not allowed to relay the exact reasoning to require fingerprinting, because it could be considered breaching release of info from someone else's criminal record if it's looking at the wrong person, for example. But the applicant will need to comply in order to complete the check and get the results, which means attending in person, there might be extra fees that are applicable as well. So that's something when we're doing program budgeting and we're sitting down about the year, do we have extra funds that we can pay to reimburse the volunteer if that happens? And or is a volunteer expected to pay themselves? Is that the line where if they can't pay themselves, then maybe they can't even volunteer at all? Things to consider when we're planning a volunteer programming, because these situations have come up and we don't always know the reason why, but it's something that we can plan for in our policy and our evaluation. So that is the end of our experimental and chaotic game show. I'm so happy to have you all here. I know that we had to reschedule from June, so I'm thrilled that everyone was able to come today. Again, you're going to get the recording, and thank you so much for participating. I know there was a lot for me to learn as well when we were putting together this presentation. So, um, congratulations to the future winner of the co-op gift card. I will be in contact with you, and then everyone else, have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful lunchtime. Reach out at any point if you have questions about screening. And thank you so much for attending.